Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, President Trump honoring Charlie Kirk on what would be his 32nd birthday. And the president warning that aid to Argentina depends on the upcoming election results. Mario Otsu with updates from the White House. Newly released hostages are monitored at hospitals a day after being released from captivity. And 4 more bodies of deceased hostages are transferred to Israel. Jason Perry has the update. The U.S. military today carrying out another strike against a vessel identified as a drug boat off the coast of Venezuela, making it the 5th one hit since August. President Trump posting the footage on social media. With the government shutdown now in its 14th day, the Trump administration says it will use tariff revenue to keep the Women, Infant, and Children Supplemental Nutrition Program afloat during the shutdown. Meanwhile, the Senate is voting for the 8th time on the 2 proposals to reopen the government. Luis Eduardo Martinez has the latest from Capitol Hill. U.S. Homeland Security says cartels are placing bounties on ICE and federal agents. Up to $50 grand is being offered, but Kristi Noem says the U.S. will not back down to the threats. David Lamb has the details. And the Supreme Court rejects an appeal from Alex Jones, leaving in place a $1.4 billion defamation judgment against the InfoWars host. That's after he described the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting as a hoax.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. President Trump posthumously awarding Charlie Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and the president warning that U.S. aid to Argentina depends on President Milei staying in power. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent Mario Otsu, who was just at the Rose Garden celebration for Charlie. Good evening, Mari. What can you tell us about the ceremony?
Tiff, good evening. It was a very moving ceremony here in the Rose Garden, and you can just see actually how many lives Charlie Kirk touched and is still touching. The event was actually supposed to be originally in the East Room, but President Trump posted on Truth Social this afternoon that because of the interest that was so enthusiastic and great that he's moving it to the newly renovated Rose Garden. And even the Rose Garden was completely packed tonight in celebration of what would have been Charlie Kirk's 32nd birthday. Erica Kirk, Charlie's widow, accepted the honor on behalf of her late husband, who was assassinated just over a month ago. Take a listen to President Trump honoring Charlie tonight. Watch.
Charlie Kirk was a martyr for truth and for freedom. And from Socrates to think, and to St. Peter, from Abraham Lincoln to Martin Luther King, those who change history the most, and he really did, have always risked their lives for causes they were put on earth to defend.
And Erica Kirk also shared moving marks of remembrance about Charlie, even sharing what her son and daughter today wished for their dad's birthday. Take a look.
Honestly, President Trump, I have spent 7.5 years trying to find the perfect birthday gift for Charlie. And it's so difficult. And now I can say with confidence, Mr. President, that you have given him the best birthday gift he could ever have.
It's also the first official National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk after both chambers of Congress approved resolutions to honor him last month. Tiff?
A very moving event indeed. On another topic, though, Mari, what came out of President Trump's meeting with the Argentinian president earlier today?
Sure, Tiff. So President Milei of Argentina and our president had a very warm exchange today in the cabinet room. President Trump is saying that he's fully endorsing President Milei for re-election in Argentina. And in return, Milei is praising President Trump for the Gaza ceasefire deal yesterday. And he's presenting President Trump with a gold-framed letter nominating President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. This meeting is coming as the United States last week finalized a $20 billion economic rescue plan to support Milei's reform agenda and stabilize the Argentinian peso. The president says that this rescue package is about, quote, helping our neighbors. Take a look.
Helping a great philosophy take over a great country. Argentina is one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever seen. And we want to see it succeed. It's very simple. If Argentina does well, you're going to have others following, and a lot of others are following.
This meeting is also coming before Argentina's midterm elections on October 26th. President Trump today is threatening to pull U.S. aid from Argentina if Milei loses the election. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Maria, thanks for those updates. In the Middle East, 4 more bodies of deceased hostages have been transferred to Israel, while some families of deceased hostages are still waiting for the bodies of their loved ones to be returned. This comes as the newly released hostages are adapting to their new lives. NTD's Jason Perry has the update and a warning. This report contains footage that some viewers may find disturbing.
A day after being released from Hamas captivity, the former hostages are still being monitored at hospitals. On Tuesday, some of their family members gave an update on their progress so far.
So Eitan was released less than 24 hours ago, so he's not sharing so much. He's just like throwing here and there some stories. He asked for meat, and when he got this plate with this huge piece of meat, he was excited, and I saw tears in his eyes.
We focused, to be honest, on being a family again, on laughing together, laughing at each other, being in the sense of comfort and safety, something we did not have in the last 2 years, and we try to embrace them as much as possible.
Meanwhile, the family members of deceased hostages are still waiting for the bodies of their loved ones to be returned. The Hamas terrorist group released the bodies of 4 hostages on Monday, and they were later identified as Captain Daniel Peretz, Yossi Sharabi, Guy Iluz, and Nepalese hostage Bipin Joshi. That leaves the bodies of 24 hostages yet to be returned. A spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross gave an update on Tuesday.
Considering the intensity of the conflict over the last days, particularly in Gaza City. Now, are they in Gaza City? Are they in the south of the Gaza Strip? Are they in the middle of the Gaza Strip? These are information that we don't have.
And on Tuesday night, the Red Cross picked up additional bodies of hostages from Hamas terrorists in the Gaza Strip. President Trump reportedly gave Hamas the okay to conduct internal security operations in the territory for a period of time. However, a video posted to social media on Monday shows the Hamas terrorist group performing a public execution of 7 individuals. President Trump said this about Hamas.
Well, they're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
And he added this about Hamas returning the bodies of the deceased hostages.
Now, they misrepresented because we were told they had 26, 24 of dead hostages, if we can use those terms. And it seems as though they don't have that.
In another development in the Gaza Strip, Israeli troops opened fire on suspects who were reportedly approaching their military position. Israel also warned residents to follow their instructions and not approach troops deployed in the area. Jason Perry, NTD News.
What do we know about Hamas's intentions heading into negotiations for phase 2 of the peace deal? Will we realistically see a demilitarization of Gaza? Tune into Capitol Report with Steve Lance tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to hear from foreign policy expert Walid Fariz. The U.S. military today carried out another strike against a small boat off the coast of Venezuela. Trump posted footage of the strike on Truth Social, saying 6 people were killed. The president said that intelligence confirmed the vessel was trafficking drugs and was associated with narco-terrorist networks. Today's operation marked the 5th strike against a suspected drug boat since Trump deployed U.S. forces to the Caribbean in August. The Trump administration argues that drug traffickers qualify as unlawful combatants, making them legitimate military targets. Some Republicans are seeking more information from the White House on the legal justification for the strikes. Democrats argue the strikes violate U.S. and international law. The Senate is voting yet again on proposals to reopen the government. Republicans warn that the Democrats' refusal to compromise could make this the longest shutdown in history. Our Washington correspondent Luis Adorno Martinez has the latest from Capitol Hill.
It seems like Groundhog Day on Capitol Hill.
The Senate is voting for an 8th time on proposals to reopen government.
The Republican House passed bill simply seek to extend current levels of government funding, while the Democratic proposal would add $1.5 trillion in government spending to extend COVID-era healthcare tax credits.
We did not load up the temporary funding bill with any Republican priorities or partisan priorities at all. I don't have anything that I can take off of that document to make it more palatable.
Around 4,000 federal employees will be terminated by reductions in force. Democratic senators from Maryland and Virginia, where thousands of federal employees live, maintain that their healthcare policy demands must be met for the government to reopen.
And we know that when we support our federal employees, we are supporting every American.
We can do both. Let's get the government reopened. Let's stop this healthcare crisis cliff and make sure these federal workers get back pay.
The White House will use research and development funds from the Department of War to pay active duty military personnel. And it will use also tariff revenue to keep the Women, Infant, and Children Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program afloat during the shutdown.
We are grateful that the White House has made available this week indicates that it may be about $300 million. And if that's correct, we think that's about 2 weeks of benefits on average if it's equally distributed across states.
Air traffic controllers and thousands of essential federal employees will miss their first paycheck this week.
Have to pay my mortgage payment. I need to provide for my family. I think any time that you have to go without a paycheck, there's a certain level of stress that comes with that.
And this introduces a new risk to aviation. Air traffic controllers are supposed to mitigate risk. Air traffic controllers ensure that risk is out of the system so that those who fly and those who we serve, that they are safe. And this brings a risk where their focus is now on, when I get off my shift today, do I have to go and drive Uber tonight?
The longer the shutdown continues, the fewer options the White House will have to keep essential personnel paid and important welfare programs like WIC afloat during the government shutdown. Republicans are bracing for what could become the longest ever government shutdown in U.S. history. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And this just in, the Senate vote has just failed. The Department of Homeland Security says cartels are placing bounties on ICE and border agents. Thousands of dollars are being offered, but the U.S. says it's not backing down in its enforcement operations. NTD's David Lamb reports.
The Department of Homeland Security said on Tuesday it has obtained credible intelligence that Mexican criminals and cartels are involved putting bounties on federal agents. Criminal networks are allegedly instructing street gangs in Chicago to monitor, track, harass, and assassinate agents. Bounties range from $2,000 for doxing an agent, up to $10,000 for a kidnapping, and up to $50,000 for assassinating high-ranking officials. According to Homeland Security, Antifa groups in Portland and Chicago have been shielding cartel-linked individuals from deportation. Secretary Kristi Noem said U.S. agents are facing ambushes, surveillance, and death threats. But she also said, quote, "We will not back down from these threats, and every criminal, terrorist, and illegal alien will face American justice." Under Operation Midway Blitz, DHS says it has made over 1,500 arrests in Illinois, including pedophiles, gang members, and armed robbers. At least 1,000 suspects were arrested in Chicago alone. The operation was launched on September 8th, targeting criminal illegal immigrants. President Trump plans to deploy the National Guard in Chicago. David Lamb, NTD News.
The Supreme Court today rejected an appeal from Alex Jones and left in place the $1.4 billion judgment against him. The InfoWars host was found liable for defamation and inflicting emotional harm after describing the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting as a hoax. The judge in the Connecticut case issued a default ruling against Jones and his company in late 2021. The judge convened a jury to determine how much Jones would owe. Jones has argued that the judge was wrong to find him liable without holding a trial on the merits of the allegations. The Supreme Court justices did not comment on their order. Lawyers for Jones told the justices that the plaintiffs would be unable to collect the entire judgment after he filed for bankruptcy in late 2022. Jones is appealing a separate $49 million judgment in a similar defamation lawsuit in Texas. Communities along the East Coast are cleaning up after a powerful nor'easter battered the region for 3 days, killing at least one person and flooding coastal towns. Meanwhile, floodwaters are sweeping through some Arizona communities. Here are the details.
In New York City, a state of emergency was in effect Monday as heavy winds and flooding turned streets into rivers. Authorities say a 76-year-old woman was killed in Brooklyn when a solar panel broke loose in the storm, hitting her on the head. Along the Jersey Shore, emergency crews rescued stranded drivers as floodwaters overtook roads. Water levels Monday afternoon were forecast to reach the 2 most severe flooding stages. The National Weather Service warned of widespread roadway flooding and closures. In Delaware, powerful waves chewed away at dunes and sent water surging into coastal neighborhoods. Voluntary evacuation orders were issued for parts of Bowers Beach as residents watched the shoreline vanish.
You're looking at what the storm took away yesterday afternoon and yesterday evening. All these tree roots were under sand and dirt at the time before the storm.
Thousands of flights were delayed or canceled at airports across the Northeast. Meanwhile, heavy rain and fierce winds have battered Arizona, flooding streets and leaving residential areas looking like rivers. In Tempe, officials say a powerful thunderstorm moved through neighborhoods yesterday, severely damaging several apartment buildings and displacing at least 130 people. Rescuers say one man died after his truck was swept away by floodwaters. The storm left tens of thousands without power and forced temporary closures at sites like the Phoenix Zoo.
While the East Coast faces floodwaters and heavy surf, communities thousands of miles away in western Alaska are also in crisis. The remnants of Typhoon Halong have left 2 coastal villages in what officials are calling absolute devastation. The storm swept homes off their foundations and left at least 1 person dead and 2 missing. Alaska state troopers say they rescued more than 50 people in 2 coastal villages on Monday. Some locals say the storm was the worst they had ever seen. Alaska senators say they will push for more disaster recovery and climate resilience funding. Coming up, President Trump is getting ready to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky this week. Today, Zelensky revoked the citizenship of Odessa's mayor and now plans to install a military administration in the city. The U.S. and China today imposing new port fees on each other. That's as the U.S. is working to encourage more domestic shipbuilding and counter unfair business practices from China. Jack Bradley reports. And Britain expects to see the full plans before approval of a huge proposed Chinese embassy in London after China previously supplied blueprints with areas blacked out. Critics in both the UK and the US have repeatedly warned the site could be used as a Chinese spy base. Malcolm Hudson has the details after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. President Trump again saying he's disappointed in Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet with Trump in Washington on Friday. Just today, Ukraine revoked the citizenship of the mayor of Odessa and is now planning to install military control in the city. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pozdar has the Russia-Ukraine update.
I had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin, but he just doesn't want to end that war.
President Trump says he's disappointed in Russian President Vladimir Putin. According to Trump, the ongoing fighting is hurting Russia's own economy to the point where it could soon collapse. His statement comes as Trump is getting ready to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington on Friday.
I know what he has to say. He wants weapons. He would like to have tomahawks. Everyone else wants tomahawks. We have a lot of tomahawks.
Zelensky's request for Tomahawk missiles comes as European military aid for Kiev is dropping sharply. Zelensky is asking foreign countries to provide Ukraine with more air defense systems. He says Russia strikes power plants, power lines, and natural gas facilities. The strikes are believed to be part of a campaign to disable Ukraine's power supply. This denies civilians heat and running water during the country's bitter winter. And Zelensky on Tuesday revoked the citizenship of Odessa Mayor Hennady Tukhanov. He's accused of having Russian dual citizenship and being part of a Russian spy network. Ukraine prohibits its citizens from also holding Russian citizenship. Zelensky says he now plans to install a military administration in the city of Odessa.
Odessa заслуговує на більший захист.
Odessa deserves more protection and more support. This can be done in the format of a military administration. There are too many security issues in Odessa.
Довго залишались.
Uconn has long been accused of holding Russian citizenship. The allegation has caused many problems throughout his political career. He once again denied the allegations on Tuesday.
All speculation about my alleged Russian citizenship is due to the fact that citizens of the former Soviet Union automatically acquired Russian citizenship under certain circumstances. However, I did not have such circumstances.
He added that he plans to appeal the decision. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
The U.S. and China are opening a new front in their trade war, this time at sea. The two countries are charging new tit-for-tat port fees starting today. That's while here at home, the DOJ is accusing a State Department employee of removing classified documents and meeting with CCP officials. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more.
The U.S. and China are now collecting new fees from each other's cargo ships. The charges impact shipping firms that transport everything from holiday gifts to crude oil. But China is exempting Chinese-built vessels from the tax. Earlier this year, the Trump administration planned to impose fees on Chinese ships to encourage domestic shipbuilding. And paving the way for that policy is an investigation under the Biden administration, which found that the Chinese Communist Party uses unfair policies to dominate maritime and shipbuilding sectors. This comes as China is tightening its rare earth mineral exports, and the U.S., in response, is threatening to tack on an additional 100% tariff on China by November 1st.
What the Chinese are doing is broad. It's on the whole world, a broad range of products that contain a tiny 0.1% of it is rare earth materials. And they're doing it to low-tech stuff. And we can't have a situation where the Chinese keep this regime in place where they want to have veto power over the world's high-tech supply chains.
President Trump says he's considering terminating deals with China regarding cooking oil and other trade elements because they're boycotting American soybeans, thereby harming American farmers. Trump calls China's move an economically hostile act and that the U.S. can easily produce its own cooking oil. China is instead purchasing more soybeans from Argentina.
Was China trying to draw a wedge between the U.S. and Argentina by buying soybeans from Argentina, not U.S. farmers?
I would say so.
And China on the port fees.
China
they've
likes to
increased
draw
port fees on
wedges.
U.S. ships, too.
The Chinese have, unfortunately, turned our soybean farmers into pawns. They're trying to manipulate them.
Meanwhile, there's a new case concerning Chinese espionage. A State Department employee is accused of removing classified documents and meeting with Chinese Communist Party officials. Ashley Tellis started working for the State Department in 2001. He's also a contractor with the Department of War. The Justice Department accuses Tellis of stealing classified documents, including military aircraft secrets. Federal prosecutors say he allegedly met with CCP officials at restaurants on multiple occasions, one time bringing a manila envelope, another time allegedly telling them about Iranian-Chinese relations and emerging technologies, and also allegedly receiving a gift bag from them. We'll have more on this case as it progresses. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Staying on China, Britain says it expects to see the full plans for a huge proposed Chinese embassy in London. This after China submitted blueprints with blacked out areas. Opponents of the proposal have warned the site would be used as a Chinese spy base. It follows recent espionage warnings to politicians from the UK's security services. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more.
China wants to build a huge new embassy in London, which would be its largest diplomatic site in all of Europe, built on the site of a 2-century-old building near the Tower of London. But there are concerns the proposed embassy could be used as a spy base, given its close location to Parliament and London's major economic centres. Warnings were raised by both British and American politicians. British Housing Minister Steve Reed will be deciding if the site should go ahead. The UK government has said it expects to make a final decision by October 21st, after it pushed back an August deadline. The government blames Beijing for withholding details on the blueprints. In August, The planning consultancy working for the Chinese regime said the regime felt it would be inappropriate to provide full internal layout plans. Reid said he expects to see the embassy plans in full, without any redacted areas, before he makes a decision. However, the timing is problematic for Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government. It was accused in recent weeks of downplaying the threat China poses to Britain's national security by allowing a trial of 2 British men charged with spying for China to collapse. Furthermore, Britain's domestic spy agency MI5 on Monday issued a rare public warning to members of parliament that they are being targeted by spies from China, Russia and Iran. MI5 warned politicians and their staff to look out for spies seeking to elicit information from them, such as by blackmail or phishing attacks, cultivating long-term and deep relationships with them, or making donations to influence their decisions. Security Minister Dan Jarvis said this guidance will help politicians and civil servants understand the threats.
It also provides simple, effective steps for individuals at risk to protect themselves, their teams, and the integrity of our democratic processes.
Starmer has sought to improve ties with China since taking office last year, but London and Beijing have repeatedly traded spying accusations, with British security services warning of Chinese attempts to infiltrate its political and business communities. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
Coming up, what did Charlie Kirk mean to Americans? We'll hear from people in D.C. and a panel about the life and legacy of the late co-founder of Turning Point USA. California is making a major move on gun sales, targeting one of the state's most popular handguns. The law aims to prevent certain firearms from being easily modified. That and more when we return. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Today marks the National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk, who would have turned 32 this year. As the country reflects on his life and legacy, NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from people about the Charlie Kirk they knew.
Today is Charlie Kirk's birthday. Who was Charlie Kirk to you?
First of all, he was a Christian. Second of all, he was someone who was trying to get America back on the right track spiritually.
It means rebirth and refreshing of the constitutional and the conservative right.
A patriot and a Christian and a teacher. He became more powerful than he could ever dream of being.
Charlie Kirk helped me navigate a hard world with my 12-year-old daughter. He prepared the way for me to have conversations that I wouldn't have been able to have. My mom would always talk about politics, and I could not stand it, and Charlie Kirk actually helped me become, I'd say, more of a conservative.
In my opinion and our family's opinion, yeah, he just kind of led us down a greater path of, like, biblically in our faith and Christianity.
He was just a very smart guy, and everything he said was brought back to the Bible, which I love. A lot of people at my school were talking about how sad it was, like, after the assassination. So yeah, a lot of people, young people, were affected by it too.
It's so important to our country is to find our disagreements respectfully, because when people stop talking, that's when violence happens.
Yeah. What do you say? No, he's not wrong. And the problem is that even when these things happen, even when you can kind of see, you know, a lot of the cultural trends that would say, hey, something bad could happen at any point in time, you don't see the people in charge of certain different groups and everything, you know, talking it down, trying to cool the temper. Do the way Charlie did it, you know, bring people to the table, talk out the disagreements, you know, that's the best way to do it.
There's more people that agree with me than some people would actually believe, and they come out of the woodwork when I do stuff like this. We record all of it so that we put it on the internet so people can see these ideas collide.
Yeah. We dealt with that even at the vigil that we went to in Idaho. I mean, very peaceful. We were all praying, singing. I had my 12-year-old there who wanted to go, and in a matter of minutes it turned violent.
Who provoked it, just to clarify?
Actually, it was the leader of Black Lives Matter in Idaho. And this guy came by on a bike and started yelling and screaming and got a couple of his little crew members with him, and then we did a little bit of research and found out it's pretty common for him.
When people stop talking, that's when you get violent.
What do you think?
That's who he was. He would debate anybody. in a peaceful manner to come to try to convince people of his belief.
Yeah, I didn't really realize the hatred toward him until he was killed. I just appreciate, like I say, his patience, the love that he showed all these people that he spoke with. He really, in my opinion, represented what Christ is all about.
President Trump rushed back from the Middle East for the award ceremony because today would have been Charlie Kirk's 32nd birthday. Charlie's widow, Erica Kirk, accepted the award on his behalf, and Argentine President Javier Milei, who was visiting the White House today, joined the celebration. To unpack the event, we have an excellent panel of guests joining us now. Terry Schilling is the president of the American Principles Project. He knew Charlie both personally and professionally. And Mike Sorelli is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL and the Chief Talent Officer at Overwatch Mission Critical. Thank you both so much for joining us. Now, Terry, I want to start with you. You knew Charlie personally. Talk to us about what kind of person Charlie was and how he might have responded to this award today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Look, I knew Charlie. I met him 5 years ago out in California at a church service, and we ended up getting closer through the Lincoln Fellowship at the Claremont Institute. And it was very special. We spent a lot of time together, arguing, debating, agreeing, laughing. But if I could summarize who Charlie was and what he really represented, it's the American dream, right? A belief in God, a love for your family, a love for your country, and building a lasting legacy. And that's who Charlie is, and that's who he's always going to be. That's his legacy.
And Mike, with even the President of the United States rushing back to honor Charlie, talk to us about the legacy he's leaving behind. What did Charlie mean to this nation?
I think he was the embodiment of the values of democracy, the ability to step into the public arena and preach and debate and elevate dialogue. And that's what he was doing. He was living his values. And somebody found fault with that, with his words, and they decided to take his life. So his legacy will live on, and it will live on through Turning Point USA, which the membership requests have gone through the roof. You see a powerful woman in Erica who will continue on his legacy by running Turning Point USA. So this really is, as I said earlier today in another segment, Charlie's fingerprint is now part of the culture in the history of the United States. And I think he's created an entire movement that just can't be killed by weapons. It can't be killed by man. It will continue to live on, and that's due to the sacrifice he made.
And on Charlie's impact, Terry, Pastor Franklin Graham, the son of late evangelist Billy Graham, posted on X, quote, "This medal is not just from the president, but from our country. And there are millions and millions of us who Charlie spoke for." What does this award say about the spiritual life that Charlie led and how it's inspired many others?
Well, I think Charlie's spiritual life that he led was incredibly strong. And you can tell that not just by the words that Charlie said all over the country, the tens of thousands of hours of video that we have of him, but you can tell it by the woman that he married and how strong she's been in light of all of this insane and terroristic adversity. I think many of us would have a very hard time going through any of this. I don't think I would be able to get out of my bed in the morning. But what we've seen from Erica is nothing short of the Holy Spirit working through her, saying that Charlie was working to save young men like the guy that killed him, working to return America back to God, family, country, saying our God is so good. Just a day after Charlie was assassinated, Charlie had a very strong spiritual life, and you can tell because his wife has a very strong spiritual life as well.
And Mike, your thoughts on that?
Faith, and from the perspective of being on the battlefield, is the only thing you have. It's the only thing that people can't take away from you. And he was a man of faith. He preached the word of God. He was hated for it by some, but he continued to live those values. And if we had more people like Charlie Kirk, which with his sacrifice, again, more people will try to emulate him, and that's a great thing. But if they have the courage to follow the word of God, to live in the values that he bestowed upon us, to treat people with respect like Charlie did, and you see that in every single debate. He was tactful, he was professional, he was respectful. he was a model for young men and women, and quite frankly, even those older than him, to emulate. And so if you can't take away, regardless if you agree or disagree with Charlie and some of his stances, if you can't agree to take away the good from the example that he set, then you're a highly flawed man or woman.
Expanding on that, Terry, Senate Majority Leader John Thune wrote, on what would have been his 32nd birthday, we honor the life and legacy of Charlie Kirk. His impact on the next generation of young leaders will live on. Talk to us about the impact Charlie had on the next generation, especially young men.
Well, as Mike was saying, I think that his biggest legacy is going to be returning this next generation back to God. But even more than that, what we saw in the polls and with voter turnout with President Trump is we saw a huge increase in support for conservatives and Republicans from the youth, from young males especially. I think that going forward, what Charlie did for young men by getting them back to loving their God, families, and country, I think that Erica Kirk is going to have a very similar legacy when it comes to young women. We're still lagging behind there, but there's still a lot of work that can be done and will be done. And I'm so excited to see Erica take the keys to the Turning Point Kingdom.
And Mike, expand for us, Charlie's impact on the next generation.
It's the genesis of why he's receiving this award for what he did. It's the why behind Charlie Kirk. I mean, you can't deny it. He mobilized the largest movement of conservative youth and brought them to the world of civics, to debate, to vote, that, hey, voting is cool, that being a patriot and defending democracy is cool. And President Trump knows that. And he even said it in the speech that he probably wouldn't have won the youth vote if it wasn't for Charlie. And Charlie was happy to do that for him. And I do have to hit on something that Terry said. Behind every strong man is a stronger woman. And we, men cannot achieve what they achieve, much like a woman cannot achieve what she achieves without a strong partner. And usually they're the strongest, even though they may not be in front of the camera. And she's inherited a massive burden, and she is handling it like a professional, a strong warrior of God. My only worry is that, she's staying busy and compartmentalizing things with as much that has been thrown at her. I just don't know. It's hard for me to fathom how somebody can continue on like Erica Kirk has, and it takes a lot of strength. And so I have nothing but respect for that woman and what she's going through and what she's inherited.
Indeed, very admirable from what she's done so far and continues to do. And we saw the White House posting today that America's best days are still ahead. Happy birthday, Charlie. Terry, how do you see the nation best honoring Charlie and the vision he had for this country?
Well, look, to all the young people that are watching, you need to find that girl, that young man, get married as soon as you realize they're the one, and start a baby, or start a family, start having babies, build a legacy, right? Get back to church, get married, have babies, build a legacy. That's what you got to do. If you want to honor Charlie, you want to keep his legacy lasting, that's what you got to do, is you got to get married, get back to church, have babies, and build a legacy.
And Mike, your thoughts?
I would actually go to the courage that Charlie's example and his sacrifice give people more courage, especially in the wake of this woke environment and cancel culture, which is we see declining. People were afraid to voice their opinions out of fear of retribution from those on the left or losing their job. So it's the courage to speak truth of what you believe in, no matter how unpopular it may be, and engage in dialogue. But have respect for the other side, listen to what they have to say, and try to find that middle ground to move this country forward. But right now, with the divisiveness and some of the disgusting responses that we saw from the left, parading or celebrating the death of a husband and father, we have some serious challenges ahead of us collectively as a nation of Americans who want to move this country forward. And to President Trump's point in his speech, he talked about feeling safe again, which I know in the wake of Charlie's assassination, even my wife and I had conversations about, we just don't feel safe not primarily for ourselves, but for our children in this this current environment.
A lot for sure. Mike Sorelli and Terry Schilling, thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In an update to another case of targeted violence, the suspect accused of setting fire to Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's home earlier this year has pleaded guilty. 38-year-old Cody Allen Balmer pleaded guilty to all counts: attempted homicide, aggravated arson, and terrorism. Balmer was accused of firebombing the governor's home on the first night of Passover this year on April 13th. The man faces 25 to 50 years in prison and a fine of up to $100,000. Following the attack, Shapiro said, quote, "This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society." He added that he doesn't care if it's coming from one particular side or the other. Coming up tonight in baseball, can the Dodgers win a second straight game on the road, or will the Brewers tie the series? Dave Martin joins us to discuss when we return. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. California is taking aim at certain handguns as Governor Gavin Newsom signs a new law targeting modified firearms. The legislation has drawn strong reactions from both gun owners and lawmakers. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
Glocks are among California's most popular handguns, but a new law now bans the sale of new Glock-style pistols in the state. The move aims to prevent the firearms from being easily modified into fully automatic weapons.
Governor Gavin Newsom signed AB 1127 into law, which targets modifications known as Glock switches that can turn some semi-automatic pistols into fully automatic guns. These modification devices can be cheaply made, sometimes using 3D printing or even Lego-style parts, raising concerns among lawmakers and law enforcement. We asked gun auction owner Jeff Tavener his thoughts on the law.
It's just another attempt at a backdoor gun ban, because any semi-auto rifle, shotgun, pistol, doesn't matter. You can make into a full auto in a matter of minutes with basically a file. There's a very famous firearm that's very legal in California that it literally takes a paper clip to turn it into a full auto.
Jeff explains how impractical it is to fire a pistol in full auto.
In fact, if you try to shoot a pistol in full auto, you'll find out quite quickly that you couldn't hit the ground with the brass.
While new Glock sales will be prohibited, the law does not affect the resale of used firearms. When asked how often do customers ask for Glocks compared to other brands?
In my retail store, we sell probably 3 Glocks to every other, because they're a good quality firearm and they're relatively reasonably priced.
And how the new law has affected Jeff's business so far.
All it's done is what it always does. As soon as you tell an American they can't have something, they want 10 of them. So our Glock sales have gone through the roof. All my suppliers are out of Glocks.
Democrat Assembly members Jesse Gabriel and Catherine Stephanie authored the bill, which allows the state to fine anyone selling, transferring, delivering, or offering the firearms up to $1,000 for a first offense, up to $5,000 and possible license suspension or revocation for a second offense, and cites a dealer with a misdemeanor and mandatory license revocation for a third offense. Supporters of the law, including advocacy groups and lawmakers, argue that it will make communities safer by reducing the availability of easily modified firearms. However, John Comerford, the executive director of the National Rifles Association Institute for Legislative Action, said the group plans to challenge Newsom's decision in court, calling the law a violation of civil rights that disarms law-abiding citizens and conflicts with Supreme Court precedent.
The ban will go into effect July 1st, 2026 and does not apply to law enforcement, military, or corrections departments. Reporting from the city of Orange, Christina Corona, NTD News.
now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on right now, but let's start in baseball as Game 2 of the NLCS is tonight, with the Dodgers having a 1-0 lead over the Brewers. Now, Blake Snell was dominant last night for LA. What do you make of the pitching matchup tonight?
Yeah, I like it. I think it should be a very good one. We've got Yoshinobu Yamamoto of the Dodgers getting the start opposite Freddie Peralta of Milwaukee. Now, both of these pitchers were all-stars this season. Both of them are going to receive Cy Young votes when the postseason ends. Paul Skeens of Pittsburgh is the likely to win with Cy Young. But this is a very even matchup tonight. Now, Yamamoto, I guess, is having a better postseason. He's got a 2.53 ERA through 2 starts. Peralta's is at 4.66, but of course, that's just 2 games. Now, last night, as you said, Tiff, Blake Snell was pretty incredible for the Dodgers. Just 1 hit allowed, no walks, no runs, 10 strikeouts through 8 shutout innings for the Dodgers. He's now 3-0 with a 0.86 ERA in this postseason. No other pitcher in these playoffs even has 2 wins. So Dodgers won that game 2-1. Brewers did get 1 run across in the 9th, but they left the bases loaded. So tonight's game starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and it will be played in Milwaukee.
Well, looking at the ALCS, the Mariners have a surprising 2-0 lead after sweeping both games in Toronto.
Yeah, they won that 15-inning marathon game Friday night. Flew to Toronto the next night, and then they've really not skipped a beat. They won 3-1 Sunday and then 10-3 last night. Now, their big star has been Cal Raleigh all season, but really in the playoffs, it's really been much more of a team effort. Guys like Josh Naylor, Jorge Polanco, Julio Rodriguez all had home runs yesterday in their 10-3 win. Now, meanwhile, as hot as Toronto's bats were against the Yankees the week before, they've pretty much been quiet these first 2 games. Vlad Guerrero Jr. has only been 0 for 7 with a walk. Of course, it's such a very small sample size, 2 games. But it is a best-of-7 hit series here, so it's a very small sample size, these whole series there. So in some ways, it's known as sometimes a cruel postseason in that manner. But tomorrow will be Game 3 in Seattle, which I'm sure we will talk about some more on Wednesday.
All right, well, that's something to look forward to. Moving to women's college basketball news, though. Uconn is ranked #1 to start the season.
Yeah, I think it was expected that either Uconn or South Carolina would open the season #1 in the rankings. These two have won 3 of the last 4 national titles, and they met in last year's national championship game, with Uconn winning 82-59. And for Uconn historically, this is the 13th time they've been #1 to start the season. Of the previous 12 times, 8 of those times they've actually won the national championship. Of course, they've won it 12 times overall anyway, so they're a good bet no matter what under Gino Auriemma. So Uconn is #1, South Carolina at #2. We've got UCLA at #3, followed by Texas at 4 and LSU at #5. Now, looking at this by conference, the SEC had the most teams here ranked, 8, including 5 of the top 10. Big 10 had 6, ACC had 5, and Big 12 had 4. Meanwhile, for the Big East, Uconn was their only member ranked. The season now starts 3 weeks from last night. It's November 3rd, with a whole bunch of teams in action. It's the same night as the men start off, so mark your calendar for that one, Tiff.
Dueling TV coverage.
Yeah, I'll be very busy that night, too.
Well, David Zaz, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tiff.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.